So, I'd like to welcome you guys back to another episode of Born to Fish, and it's actually a more special one. Well, specialist in my sense, because it's the first time I've actually recorded us going ocean fishing, and it wasn't with Angel or anything, but it was you couldn't go. It was our first time recording ocean fishing. That was my first time going float tubing in the harbor at Long Beach. It was a interesting experience. I mean, obviously you're in the ocean, you're at higher risk at putting yourself in danger in the ocean than float tubing in the lake. I mean, the boats swim right past you. They barely, some of them don't even care. So you have to kind of paddle away really quickly. And that's kind of more of the danger. So, and then with the harbor, even launching off on your float tube, it's fairly deep already as it is. I mean, I would cast out, I don't know, maybe a few yards out, and then let my line hit the bottom since we were kind of doing a drop shot rig. And it would take off half my spool, and then all my reels were pretty much at 100 yards capacity, so it's fairly heavy, fairly deep, as I would say. But yeah, it's just like fishing off a jetty where there's rocks by the surf, using soft plastics, we were using gulp minnows, but we should probably use something else. These gulp little minnows. And we should probably use something else, but, it was an interesting experience right from the beginning. A friend of mine, he caught, I believe, a sand bass, and then I was getting a couple of bites in the beginning as well, but nothing for me until somewhat in a little while into the end. I think I got 4 bites and I didn't hook anything. Him, I think on his second bite, he hooked a sand bass. But the thing is with this particular rig, it's a drop shot rig, like a fairly heavy sinker, like an 1/2 ounce casting sinker, and then with the size 4 up to a size 1, I would use mosquito hook. I would put the gulp minnow, the bass fishing one, not the saltwater series, the bass fishing one, and we would drop shot with that. Usually 1 hook or a 2 hook. I think the limit's a 2 hook when you drop shotting like that. And I couldn't keep the lizards away off of myself, the lizard fish. It's a long fish, it doesn't grow that big. They have teeth, and then its face is obviously of a lizard. And I couldn't keep those away. I caught like 6 or 7 of those and wasn't really targeting them, but they make good cup bait in the ocean. I'll get to that in a little bit. And then it was an interesting experience, first experience float tubing. I mean, we went out, I wasn't really catching anything. When we launched off, there's the opening to go into open water, and we passed that and we went into the actual harbor where the boats are at. And then you can see the bait fish. The water was fairly clear. You can look over the float tube and you can see all the bait fish. So using those minnows, we were kind of mimicking what was there, but what was mostly there were the lizards, and I couldn't keep them off. And then caught like 6 lizards, and I kept one and I cut it up, and then I used it's a Rhino XL reel. It's a 2 bearings. It's not that great of a reel, but I was using that, just casting it out to the bottom. I was paddling away from where I dropped it and then dragging it, so kind of trolling. And then I had a wire.
Had a few hits.
Set up with a piece of cut lizard fish, so it was kind of trolling and it was kind of floating up as I moved along. And then I think I've caught, before I started doing that, I've actually cast it out. And then this is how aggressive they were. Where I was in this little harbor, like where these 2 big boats were, and then I dropped, he wants to get attention. I dropped it, right when I was dropping it, like I was just like, I'll just drop it right here since I'm close to it. Before I just dropped a couple of yards down, and then something hit, and then I was able, my hand was in the way, so I just pressed my thumb down, and then it set the hook, and then it was a lizard about 12 inches. It was close to 12 inches, so it was pretty big. And then since he swallowed it, I kind of gill hooked him. So obviously that was the one I used for bait. And then I started catching more and more lizards, and I was trying to go for a sand bass or a spotted bay bass, but I didn't have any luck. And then that's when I started. He didn't make it, the lizard fish, so I was like, you know what? I'll just troll with a piece of cut lizard. Maybe you could get into a croaker or maybe into a spotted bay bass. So I cut him up, and then I started trolling. We were into this little harbor. My friend caught a lizard, I think. And then as we were trolling, he made a rod holder out of PVCs, and you attach them to the float tube. So we have to stiffen them up so they won't be moving. So his was pretty stiff, except the rod holder that's on his left, the rod holder that's on his left wasn't glued. And then he's been going to the harbor before, and then he had his G Loomis rod and his Lose Speed on, and he was trolling a swim bait, that about 3-inch swim bait. It wasn't fairly that big. And then he was going back, and then a nice spotted bay bass or a sand bass, I think it was a spotted bay bass, gives it a tug, and then the PVC comes undone, and then you just see his rod go into the water, and then his face was kind of priceless. And I don't know, actually I do know how that feels. So he must have had a little tiny heart attack, but he had probably about the $300 combo, and I'm just seeing it. The lucky thing was that his handle, the G Loomis handle, was corked, so since the fish was kind of swimming straight, it wasn't pulling anything down, it was floating. So, and then you see it slowly going down, and then another friend of us who was there, he was trying to, the thing with the float tube was that since you're paddling back, it was going straight, so he couldn't paddle to reach in without falling into the water. And then another friend of us who was in front of him saw it, and then he put his rod in the water and lifted it up, and he managed to pull the fish out. So it was about 1.5 pounds spotted bay bass, so it was a good catch. But I mean, his heart probably just dropped when he saw the rod go in. And I've seen that happen before, and then I've always been pretty cautious about that. But while that was happening, we kind of turned, and then we saw the dolphins going into the bay, so that was pretty interesting. Just a little recap of what happened during the day. And then that's what happened, and then we saw the dolphins coming in. It's kind of interesting that they weren't breaching at first. You just see a dorsal fin, and then obviously we thought, worse, we're like, that's a big shark if that's what that is, because he was pretty far away. And then we saw them breaching. They're like, they're dolphins, they're probably coming in to feed or something, for the winter. Fish may be coming in at the bay, so they're probably feeding. And then we obviously saw the sea lions as well, but I don't have any questions. I hate when that happens. And then, it's an interesting day. We kept on going on, and then after that, I had a rope with a clip on it. Not a big rope, more like it was a lanyard, but it was a clip lanyard, and it wasn't one of those clip ones. It was already attached together, so you couldn't take it apart. So I do the dropper loop thing when you put the hook and you're able to attach a hook and remove the hook. Simple. So I did that onto my float tube, and then I clipped on the rod. Well, I have the rod right here, actually. I clipped the lanyard onto the, let's see if you can see it, onto the little hook keeper. I clipped it on there with my reel, and then I just started trolling like that. And then my reel's a bait runner, so I was stationed. So when I was pulling, when I was trolling back, I let a few lines out. No, I'm sorry. I let a few I let a couple of yards out, more than a couple of yards, probably like 20 yards out of line. And then when we saw the dolphins, we were stationed. We were pretty stationed. We were barely moving the current, but the current was pushing us forward towards where my line was. And then I kind of noticed my line straightening, and then I had a huge take, and then I was staring at my line saying that, is it us because I'm moving away and it's snagged? And then I kind of barely paddled a little bit to the point where I wasn't moving at all. And then when I just noticed a huge take, I locked on and I had dead weight at the end of the line. And I ended up pulling about a 2-pound stingray. I was hoping it was a halibut or something else. But, it was a stingray. I let him go. I just handled him pretty much with great care. I didn't want to get stung, especially out in the harbor. He wasn't that big of a stingray. But yeah, I let him go, and then I kept on trolling, and then most of the times I would stay stationary and I would get hits, but it was probably the smaller bass picking at it, or they weren't getting hooked or something, or maybe snags. I never knew. I was stationary. I was getting a little bit of a take, but nothing too big. We left pretty early. It was around 11 when we started fishing at around 7:30, almost 8. So we didn't fish that much, but it was overall a good experience. I mean, there was a couple of sand bass, spotted bay bass, caught a lot of lizards, and kind of want to try a new rig for the halibuts at the harbor just to stay away from them. And then it was a very interesting experience just going on into that. And then it was fairly cool. I mean, this was a while back, but I mean, we're starting to get a little cool front coming back finally in California, Southern California. Hopefully it would stay that way. I mean, it's like 70 something outside. It feels good even though the sun's out. So let's just stay that way for the majority of the time. And then we might go back, but we were wearing waders because it was pretty cold. I mean, when we got there, it was in the 60s. So we were wearing waders also, so we wouldn't, when we left, we wouldn't ruin the truck, the interior of the truck. But yeah, it was a very interesting time. We were just using that. We were trolling. My friend was trolling a swim bait, and he caught I think 2 spotted bay bass. And then I was trolling the meat, and I caught a stingray. And then it was overall a pretty good day. Slow day. Mostly lizards, like 6 freaking lizards. Oh my god, I'm sorry. Kind of tired. 6 freaking lizards. No sand bass at all, but 6 lizards and stingray. I had a feeling that I did lose a sand bass. Because, I mean, it felt way bigger than it actually was, but then again, it could have been a small halibut. But then again, you never know. You just never know. I'm not going to exaggerate that. Oh, it was a 2-pound bass. Like a lot of fishermen do. I'm just saying that it could have been a sand bass since it was fighting differently, but he came undone. Because the sand bass they don't really attack these as you would think. You hook them and the lure's like, it's barely lit. I mean, the lizard fish, when I freaking hooked them, they wouldn't get off because they swallowed the thing, and that's how I ended up gill hooking that one, so I had to kill him. But overall, it was a pretty good experience. We had a good time. Totally different experience fishing the harbor like this, well convenient. Especially when the boats could care less if you're there. I mean, but different experience. I would love to go back and do it. You know, you gotta fix those rod holders. And, you know, maybe we'll do something like this. It was just talking, but I'm showing this footage of we were there. Not a lot of footage. I did film stuff on the head cam, but I need to get a better head cam since it flickers every time I look up. So, you know, but still, very interesting experience. So, wow, I was talking for 13 freaking minutes. So, I'll talk to you guys later. Actually, before I send off, where is it? Where did I leave it? This is what I'll show you guys in the next video, which will probably after be this one or before this one. But anyways, thanks guys for tuning in. We'll probably do this again real soon and probably get a little bit more talking into rigs we're using. And I want to catch a spotted bay bass or a legal halibut, but we'll see what happens. And I'll talk to you guys another time. You know, just what can I say? Gotta keep on fishing. Born to fish.